Hello guys, so I've been pretty much learning a lot of AWS stuff, and today I'm just going to show you how to quickly deploy a static website to Amazon S3. We are going to see this behind CloudFront for content delivery, and then we are going to use Rat 3 to have our custom beautiful shining domain name. So I want to create a quick Next.js project. I don't want to use any of the server rendered features of Next.js because I want to deploy with S3. I just want it to export purely static HTML assets. So yeah, cool. I run nps create next up. What am I going to call this project? Let's call it S3 website demo, static website demo. Basically, it has to be a static website for it to work off S3, right? I use TypeScript. Yes, links. Yes, tailwind. Okay, no src directory, app router. Yes, I want to use import alias. Default is just fine, and it's going to try to do this, right? So it's going to install all the dependencies, and it's just a simple app, just a very simple app. Just to re-echo it, I don't need any of the server-side features of Next.js. If you have that, this might not work for you. So it's just a static website I want, and that's what I'm going to deploy to S3. Why S3? It's pretty very cheap to host assets. It's always available and cheap, fast, reliable. That's just it, right? CloudFront is even going to make it even more accessible. That's also going to give us content delivery, right? So I'm going to do cd into S3 website. I'm just going to do npm run dev to even see that it works. So I'm going to try this, and it should come up. It should really come up. First time, right? Okay, yeah, so good. So we have a demo app running. I'm going to quickly close that, kill that, open it in VS Code. Let's just open it up, make this big. So you might want to go through whatever we have here. I just run an npm run dev. If you run next build, it's not going to be purely static because server-side rendering and all that. I want to make Next.js export purely static websites. So I'm going to say export output export. I also like to set the trailing slash true here, right? You need that. And the directory, yeah, this directory by default it will be in a .out folder. I like to call this build because this will come from create react background vite. It's just letting you know that as far as you know where the build output is going to be, then you don't have an issue. So let's see what we've done. If we run npm run build now, and let's just take this up, it's going to try to create a purely static export, and we are going to test that locally. This is not really unique to Next.js alone. Any static framework, Angular, speed at static website, Remix, speed at the static website, or just a plain HTML CSS, you can host it on S3, right? Good. So we are still on the code side of things. We'll soon get to the console where we have fun. Good. So this has generated a static website. If we go to the build folder, we specified, right? It should be in the build folder. This is what we have. This is purely static. Let's try to run this. I want to do something. If I do reveal in Finder, right? Because of the way these apps are compiled, you just cannot just come and do index.html. I expect it to come up. It's not going to show up, so it's not going to load it up. I'll show you one way of loading up a static website, right? I have a package installed that is called serve, npm serve. That's what it just does. Most like live server, it helps us serve static content, right? You can install it globally or you can install it in the project. I already have it installed globally for me, so I'll just show you how it works. If I come here now, because we have a build folder, I can say serve and I can say build. So let it serve that build folder as a web server would do it. Right? Let's see, is it coming up? Okay, clear serve that yeah, flag. You can go through the documentation, right? You can go through the documentation, right? You just do serve for that name. That should work. So it's up, right? So we are not running the project. We are just serving whatever is in this build folder, right? And if we hit this, see it comes up, it still works. So yeah, so that's what is in our build folder. That's what we are serving. So it's prepared, it's ready to be deployed to S3 as a static website. If you get it up to this stage, then it's ready to be deployed to S3 as a static website. All we need to do is to push this to GitHub. It's gonna, by the way, the next command we use to create would usually initialize GitHub for us. And I'm going to commit this on the main branch. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to create a new public repository so I can share for you guys to see. And yeah, it's on GitHub. It's there on GitHub. Yeah, we are good. We are good at this stage. We've gotten it to GitHub. Now that we are done with GitHub, we want to head over to the console portal.aws.amazon.com. Let's make this. Okay, this is good. Go to S3 because we want to, this is where we are going to be hosting our static files. Basically everything in the build folder. Okay, click on create a bucket. I have a domain that I bought, cardinary.shop. I usually like to name my bucket after the domain name, right? So the defaults are just fine. I'll just do this super fast. Catenary.shop. Now we have to go to the bucket. For it to be website enabled, for it to be able to run a static website, we have to enable static web hosting. So if you go to the bucket, click on it, click on properties. At the bottom, you see this static web hosting. Come here, click on enable, host the static website. Good. The index document is index.html. The error document for a Next.js project, usually 44.html, right? Anyone for your project, you specify it here. 44.html. And if we hit save changes, it's going to give us a URL. Now I'm just going to click on this URL, and if we check it, we're going to get a 434 BD. Because we've enabled static web hosting, that doesn't give the public right to access our bucket. So we have to go to permissions. We know it's a public bucket, right? It's going to be a website, so we definitely want to turn off this. We don't want to block public access. We want to allow public access, right? I'm going to confirm. Now, next thing is, it still wouldn't work because now we've done this. Who should be able to access? We want to come here and add a policy. It's a very simple policy, nothing crazy. Add statement, services S3, and is get object. We want to be able to get our object. Exactly. Cool. So who should get that object? Everybody from the internet, whatever. Which resources? Although this I just want one of these, so I can do this. I can also do this. I want to take this bucket ARON, just copy that, and then add a star. Why? Because it's not the bucket itself we want to access, it's the objects inside the bucket that we want to access. Right, I'm just going to call this public read access, so you can get all the objects in this bucket. Now, if we hit save changes, right, and come here, we're still going to get an error, but it's not 403, it's not 404, there's no file found. So if we were to have an index.html here, or we were to take everything from this build folder and dump it here, trust me, it's going to come up, voila. But we want to do those parts with CodePipeline, so let's do CI/CD. It's on GitHub, something should take it to the bucket for us. So let's look for CodePipeline, do developer tools. I have some connections to GitHub, but I had to delete it for this tutorial. So I'm assuming you don't have any connection to GitHub already. Your AWS cannot yet talk to your GitHub. So we want to go to connections first. Let's go create a connection to GitHub. Click on create connection, GitHub. Let's call it GitHub connection. Good. Connect to GitHub. And you can do any other provider. So this we want to install an app. So we install a new app that will give us the permission we need to all our repositories or some of our repositories. You can be very granular. I like to be very granular. You can say all repositories and all your repositories, you have access to it. You can say selected repository. I prefer to do this. And let's do S3. That's the name of the, S3 website demo is what we called it. We install and authorize so that there'll be a connection to that bucket, that repository. I want to do class now. There's no classes today. Okay, so now you see we have app. Yeah, you should add tags, right? I'm just being very lazy and very super fast today. It's a demo. Okay, so we've created a connection. Okay, we've created that connection. So the next thing, let's go back to developer tools. Let's go to CodePipeline and just get started. Although I know beforehand that we need to build the project, right? We run npm run, which I could actually go create the code build beforehand. But I think we can also do it from the pipeline. We can also create the connection while creating the pipeline. Make sure you're on the same region where the bucket is. So let's go. Let's call this static website CI/CD pipeline, and the defaults are good. Create a new service role, no problem. If you want to add the environment variable at the pipeline level, no problem. Where is it coming from? It's coming from GitHub. Use GitHub version 2. We already have a connection, or you could have connect to GitHub to take the same interface. So let's click on this GitHub connection we have, and if we check the repository, we are going to see our repository there, the ones we gave access to, and this is the default branch. When do we want this event to run? And whenever you push to a certain branch, which branch? You can specify the branch here, main branch. Good. You can exclude branches. Next, that's a comma separated string, right? This one you can do to different branches, but we just have main branch. Next, how do we want to build the code? Let's build with CodeBuild, just Jenkins, but let's do everything here. Okay, we want to create a project, CodeBuild project. It's gonna pop this up, and let's see. Let's call this static website project. Copy this. Check, add descriptions, add tags. This is just fast, yeah, on demand. Just come do your thing, manage. Cool. The basic is good. Amazon Linux is good. Standard. This is standard. You may want to care about the architecture if it was the backend and it needs a certain architecture, but the defaults are really just fine. Let's create a new service role. For the service role, then these are some config you can add, maybe timeout and all that. I'm not going to bother myself with this. No, nothing. You want to put this in the VPC? We don't want to do all this. Let's say you have a monitoring tool like Sentry. Those tools we usually like envs while you are building the code. You may want to specify that env here at the build stage. So how would we run the command? So you could use a build spec.yml file in your code and then push it, or I just want to do it here because I like the autocomplete I get from here. So I'll choose insert build command, and then I'll say switch to editor, and I'm left with this to specify how I want this to be built. I know there are different phases. There's an install phase, and in that install phase we can actually specify the runtime versions, and we can say Node.js, and that will be 20. Okay, and then I want to go back and say I want these commands to do npm install. Okay, and after that I want to do npm run build. If you want to run your test cases, there is a post build stage, and now we want to specify where our artifact is going to be, right? So ideally we are done deploying, so where it's going to be. So that will be us coming here and saying you can find our artifacts here. Let's give it a base directory build, and I want to copy all files and folder. Say all files and folder. So this looks good. Yeah, you can just review it, touch it somewhere. It looks good. And then we can say project. So we want to configure CloudWatch so we can see logs while it's building, right? Let's call this build logs, and then build log stream, so that when we are building our code, we'll be able to see the logs of what is happening, right? It's an interesting moving to watch. So let's see, continue to CodePipeline. So we are done with the build stage. I think this should be really good. Yeah, I'll leave. Usually it's gonna work. So yeah, successfully created that single build. Yeah, then next we want to deploy to, you can deploy anywhere, but S3, what are we deploying? What was built, the build artifact, not the source code. Which bucket? This is the bucket catenary.shop. We don't want to put it on the subfolder, so no need for this. We want to extract our files. Yeah, good. So this looks good, honestly. This looks good. So we're just going to create this pipeline. And immediately we create the pipeline, it's going to run. So you can just review. Good. So it's going to start running the pipeline. Let's go back to our bucket and see. Go back to the bucket while it's running the pipeline by the side. If you remember, this is still not found. That's because no files is in our bucket yet, okay? So if we go back to catenary.shop, these are subdomain, right? I probably take it down while you're watching the video, but it's empty, right? We don't have the faulty error anymore. We have fall for error. We can't find any index.html. Makes sense? Yeah, see, let's try to locate index.html, but we can't find it. Make this bigger. Good. So let's wait for this first stage has run, and the build stage is currently running. So because we set up CloudWatch, we can watch the logs. You can go to CloudWatch and see it's running here. So if your entire log is going to show you everything. Going to even take it directly to the log. The better way. This is done, I think. Yeah, and then in fact everything is done. It builds and it deploys. So if we go back to this and we reload, we'll see our files here. So beautiful. It's like it's gonna work. And if I reload that would work. But if we go back to properties and we hit this, then see, working perfectly. Great. Now next thing I want to do, because it's simulating a production server, we want to see this behind CloudFront. So let's create our CloudFront distribution. And I'm going to look for catenary.shop. By the way, this is optional. It's going to tell us that this has a website endpoint. Let's use it. No problem. No problem. I'm going to keep the default for now. I'm going to keep the default. It's all good. Just work with me. And we don't want this for now. Let's just create a distribution. It's going to be deploying. It's going to deploy. So while it's deploying, we may not be able to access it yet. So if we hit this, it's not coming up yet, right? It's not coming up yet. But if we go back to S3 and go to the bucket and go to the bucket to properties, take this, hit it, see it's coming up, but this is not coming up yet. It's still deploying the CloudFront distribution. So this where you have to do a little bit of patience. We can multitask though. You know, I said we are going to be connecting it to a custom domain name. So let's quickly go do something. Let's go to Route 53. When we are talking domains, that's where we should be finding it. I'll just reload this one more time. It's still deploying. I'm going to come here and say hosted zone. I have the domain on Namecheap, but everything DNS management, I want to move it to AWS. I'm going to come here and say create a hosted zone. And put this. You can do a subdomain, but I just want to move everything about domain management to AWS. It's pretty nice. So created this. If you come here, you need to go set your name servers to point to this, otherwise it's not going to work. So if I go to Namecheap domain list, I click on one of my domain, I'll have this. Come to name server custom DNS, and then I can specify the name servers. Where is it? This is it. It's going to move this here. Good. This is it. Add name server. Take this. This is it. Add another name server, the last one. So this is it. Good. I'm going to click on this. It takes a while for name servers to propagate though. Or let's just go. We are multitasking here where we okay, now good. Our CloudFront distribution is coming up. Now we also want that HTTPS, right? So for us to do that, so now that we have our DNS configured and Route 53 can now help us do DNS management, we want certificate HTTPS, right? Stuff like that. We can go to certificate manager. So just set for certificate manager, and say request a new certificate. Let's put a fully qualified domain name here, catenary.shop. Also need one for www.catenary.shop. The domain, basically the DNS validation is fine. This is fine. And it's going to try to create that, right? If you go to Route 53, we currently have 2 records. These are default records that get created. You can delete them. And you'll see some records will be displayed here. And basically, you have to go configure this. If your DNS provider was to be elsewhere, you go configure the CNAME and the values. Those are CNAME records. But because we are already in AWS Cloud, Route 53 is already configured on that domain, so we can actually just do create record in Route 53. It's going to pick it up and it's going to help us create those records. And if we go to Route 53 and reload, we'll see now we have 4 records, these 2 CNAME records. And we also want to make sure this status leave pending validation. So let's see. Just going to reload. It's still in pending validation. So let's be a bit patient. Let's be a bit patient, and it's going to issue this certificate. All right, great. So now that our certificate is issued, we can go back to CloudFront, and still on general settings, we can click on edit. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so we can set domain name. So let's add catenary.shop, and let's also add www.catenary.shop, and we have to choose a certificate that has these 2 domains in scope. So this should work. We don't want to do any other thing here, so save changes. This is not enough to get that domain working. I also want to check the behavior. So C, go to edit, the default behavior. I want to redirect whenever you come from HTTP. I want to redirect you to HTTPS. So that's all I'm going to set there. Cache validation is anytime you are done deploying, you want to invalidate your cache. So right, this looks good. So this looks good, but it's not the end. It's not the end yet. So we want to go back to Route 53 and create a new record. In fact, 2 records actually. One on just catenary.shop, and that would be an A record to be an alias to CloudFront. And this is the CloudFront distribution. We should create another one for www. Same thing, an alias record. Ideally, it should be a CNAME, but because we're in AWS, we can do an alias record to CloudFront also. If you don't see the domain here, just be sure that you've not configured it properly. You've not done certificate manager. You've not paired certificate manager to CloudFront. That's the only way you see it here, right? In a record. So that looks good. Save. And if I attempt to go to catenary.shop, I should, okay, it's still propagate. That's HTTPS. Not coming up yet, I know. DNS propagation always takes time. So let's be patient. It's gonna come. Catenary.shop. Okay, good, and you see it works. So that's a beautiful tutorial. Yeah, one last improvement. I'm not going to show you that. Yeah, one last thing we want to do is that we actually need a stage to invalidate our cache whenever the build is complete. And there are 2 ways you could go about that. You could either add a CodeBuild that just run a little bit of Python code to invalidate your cache using this cache ID, or you could do it with an event in S3. So you could do whenever the objects in this bucket changes, then it should maybe call a Lambda function to invalidate the cache. So that's something you can get your hands on. If you can't figure it out, you can let me know and I'll do a video for it. Thank you. So let's just go check again www.catenary.shop, and yeah, it works.